Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Single best idea, and it's a special one. We got a thing at the end, a Q&A that is just, it's filed away, it's archived, it's heritage. We're going to have Ian Lyngen with us with BMO, and Dennis Gartman's going to join us. And this really sets up the raging linkage. It's called a Fisherian linkage, not after Stanley Fisher, after Irving Fisher, but a linkage of how interest rates fold into inflation, somewhat how they fold into the economy, how they fold back into the bond market, and then ultimately into the stock market. You get the broad idea. They don't agree. Ian Lyngen says we're going to see yield come down, we're going to see disinflation set in, and boy, does Dennis Gartman go the other way. It's the great call of the last 10 years. Dennis Gartman, long gold, short yen, or gold in yen is the way the trade's called. It's been a moonshot, bigger than cocoa. He reaffirmed that today. Look for the entire broadcast. But here is Dennis Gartman linking tin and other commodities to your inflation.
I think we're starting to see inflationary pressures incumbent everywhere. Grain prices have stopped going down and have started to go up. Meat prices have been going up for a while. Clearly, crude oil and heating oil prices have been going from the lower left to the upper right, and I think are going to continue to do so. Copper prices, tin prices, aluminum prices have been going up. This is, I think, a problematic circumstance, not something that's going to go away anytime soon. And that's been one of the driving forces behind the purchase of gold and gold's bull move. So I'm a little concerned, again, that the public has gotten enamored of gold in the course of the past week or two, but the fact that we've taken gold down $15 or $20 from its high probably took a few of the weak hands that had come into the market in the past couple of days. I think if you want to be a buyer, you've probably got another $15 to $20 on the downside in gold, but then I'd be a buyer there, no question. This is a global circumstance that's prevailing right now.
Dennis Gartman with a popular view. Boy, do we get a lot of mails. Out on YouTube, we get the live chat with a lot of support for what Gartman says. Some on the street would push against it, and that's all part of the conversation. What we love to do is not move segment to segment. We're not, slaves to it, but we love to have a set of debate across 3 hours of Bloomberg Surveillance. Darkening the door after Mr. Gartman was Ian Lyngen. He's won every award in fixed income. He's at the Bank of Montreal, BMO Capital Markets, BMO Capital Markets. Ian Lyngen writes a morning note. I'm going to say it's 7 paragraphs long. It's dense, dense, dense. It's for Global Wall Street. Really informative and really opinionated. And then he'll drop a bombshell on you, as he did 8 months ago when he said, buy the 10-year yield, price up, yield down. That hasn't worked out. I asked him if he'd reaffirm that. Where is the 10-year going? He does not agree with Dennis Gartman.
I think there's a strong case to be made that we end 2024 with 10-year yields in a range of, let's call it, 375 to 395. The big question right now is how far do they back up until we start to get some dip buying. I do think that we're right up against a range where it makes sense to really load the boat. Between that 465 and 475 level in tens, I expect a fair amount of dip buying interest to come in. The caveat is that the 10-year auction yesterday needed a much bigger concession to be taken down, and I think that was simply the investors stepping back, given how much volatility there was in the market at the moment.
I was home yesterday. True story. I woke up from the surveillance nap and I'm sitting there and it's Bramo on line 3. Lisa Abramowicz says, see, Tom, I told you, you got to pay attention to the 10-year auctions. It was ugly yesterday. Bramo briefed me on that. Ian Lyngen there with BMO Capital Markets. And really that is the heritage. There's 2 heritages to the show. The key heritage is we love to see informed differences of opinion. I'm not going around saying, oh, you were wrong, or you were right. But the conversation of Wall Street, and you see it partitioned there from Dennis Gartman and Ian Lyngen. Of course, one of the other heritages of Bloomberg is they wait in the control room for me. In my shortened, 1 hour workday, they wait for me to ask a question that no one understands, and even sometimes informed guests don't understand. Here is Francis Donald of Manulife throwing me under the bus. If we have higher inflation, does that mean higher nominal GDP, or does inflation-adjusted GDP depress so much that we don't get an animal spirit lift?
Tom, once again, I think it's going to take me longer to figure out what that question is than answer it.
Such charm. Are we going to have her back on the program again? And what's interesting there is that's an algebraic equation. It's nominal GDP, the top line, the GDP you're making right now, and you take out inflation, equal sign, and it's left with a residual. And my question was a little clumsy because I was going across three variables, going circular back to the first variable, nominal GDP. And the good Francis Donald called me out on clearly a lack of clarity there. So here's the debate. You got an animal spirit first, and then you take out inflation. And you're left with this thing that Chairman Paul and everybody, Francis Donald, Ian Lyngen, Dennis Gartman look at, which is inflation-adjusted or real GDP. And the risk, and it's an ambiguity, the risk can be, do we see inflation go up and stay up? And what does that do to nominal G in front of it? Or what does that do to real GDP on the back end? And this is a raging debate. Nobody has a certain answer on that. I think we'll have, Francis Donald is so nice, we got to have her back. Don't you think so? I think we should. It is single best idea. We're out on Apple CarPlay. We're out on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Podcast for a great live chat. And we're just thrilled. We're on Chartable. I'm on Apple Podcast Chartnet. We're building it out. Single best idea, of course, search for Bloomberg Surveillance.